1. My family comes from a country-esque area, where your closest neighbor is a short walk down the road, and the trip into town can last close to 2 hours, 30 minutes back and forth, plus whatever time you need to run whatever errands you have. My family is also one of the oldest settled names in the area, and is well known for my grandfather and great-uncle's contributions to our community. For the longest while, the road my family lived on was a common dirt road, and the closest fire department was 20 minutes away. Wanting their community to have what's best for everyone, my grandfather and great-uncle set to work. They gathered donations, lobbied with our local MLA, and collected statistics to show our provincial government why paving our road and erecting a nearby fire department would be beneficial to not only the residents, providing them with safety and security, but also to any politicians to avoid lawsuits or larger, more expensive bills in the future. Long story short, their efforts were a success. In spring of 1982, the road was paved, the fire department was built, and my grandfather and great-uncle became chief and deputy chief respectively. My family's name was held in high regard after that, and almost everyone knew of who our family consisted of. Not trying to brag, this info is just essential to the story. A few days ago, I finished my summer contract working with the Canadian Reserve Forces and returned home. After settling in and unpacking, my dad came to me with a dilemma. The upcoming Blueberry Festival, a community formal dinner that the fire department held every year on August 17th to help raise funds, was understaffed, and he asked if I could volunteer. I said yes, and I showed up to help however I could. I waited tables, put together sandwiches, entertained guests, took tickets, etc. As the day wound down, I found myself working the takeout section. Things went fine for a bit. People would show me their tickets for the festival, I'd make idle conversation while their orders were put together, and I'd hand them their takeout dish. Then a woman and her 2 toddlers walked in, looked around for a bit, and then waltzed up to the window. "Excuse me, I'd like 3 takeout dinners, please." "Sure thing. You have your tickets, ma'am?" "I was told that my food would be put in reserve for when I picked it up, so no, I don't have them." This was odd to me. The reason we sold tickets was so we never had to make more than we needed. Even my family had to buy tickets if we wanted food. I explained to her that we didn't have any extra food made up, so just to be on the safe side, she would have to show me her tickets to receive her dinners. "Oh, that's bullshit. Do you know who I am? I'm family of Ronnie's. He said there'd be some food for me and my kids." I'm a little shocked, but taking her word as being family, since my grandfather's side is pretty big. "Oh, I'm sorry, I can check with him over the phone. Who do I tell him you are?" She gives a loud, exasperated huff before saying, "I'm Judy, his daughter-in-law." That's my mom's name. It took me a bit to process what she just said. I asked her to repeat herself, which she did, adding, "What, are you deaf as well as stupid?" Thoroughly insulted and done with her, I told her that she was in fact not my mother, and if she wanted her food, she would either have to present her tickets or come up with a better lie than her current bullshit. She gave me the "how dare you" face before going on a rant about how I should watch my language around her young children, despite her just saying the exact same curse word to me moments before. Her tirade attracted the attention of my father, who was working with the fire department as well. He walked over and asked what was up. Before I could open my mouth, this lady goes on ranting about how she was promised free dinners for her and her kids by my grandfather, that I denied them, insulted her, and even had the audacity to claim that she wasn't even part of the family. My dad, being just as confused as I was and not having any memory of her being part of the family, asks her who she was. She gave him the same reply she did to me. "I'm Judy," my mom's and therefore my dad's wife's name. "Holy shit, is everyone here stupid?" My dad replied simply with, "Lady, you are most certainly not my wife." Her face gawked and turned bright red as her mind tried to form a response. In the end, she rushed her kids out the door and left. 2. Some people just do not understand the role of a lifeguard. I worked as one for 2 summers on the early morning weekday 6 to 10 a.m. shift, and had very few customers because the trailer park and RV resort I worked at was a sad affair, mostly populated in the winter by snowbirds anyway. The few customers I had who were in the RV park on vacation were almost universally horrid. The most memorable, beyond your usual ones who didn't want me to tell their kids to stop running, or didn't like the no glass bottles on the pool deck rule were these. Number 1. An entitled mom tried to drop off 2 kids under the age of 6. When I told her she couldn't do that, she called me lazy. Since I had no other customers, why couldn't I watch her kids? Because I was a lifeguard, not a babysitting service. Because it would violate our insurance policy. Because other people could theoretically show up, and I'd need to watch them in the pool. She proceeded to get all huffy and insist, "But I'm on vacation too. I deserve a vacation." Well, maybe you shouldn't have had kids, but at this point, hire a babysitter. Somewhere in here, I got the hard to be a single parent rant. She eventually told me to watch them and just walked off. So I called the police per our policy on abandoned children. Which I just made up on the spot. This place was not together enough to have a policy for that. She was not pleased with the resulting visit from multiple authorities, cops and child services. She did try to go to the manager of the resort to complain, but he was perpetually drunk or hungover. That was not a useful escalation path, to put it mildly. Number 2. We often had some local kids break into the pool overnight to party. Usually when this happened, they just left beer cans around and the gate open. Whatever. Anything solved with a trash bag isn't a big deal. However, the time the gate being left open resulted in an alligator in the pool, my manager being useless, see above, I locked up the pool area, put out the close sign I used during my breaks, and called the Fish and Wildlife Services. Now, if you've ever called Fish and Wildlife Services about an alligator in your pool, Floridians, you know they aren't going to come quick. It was my bad luck this was one of the rare days somebody tried to use the pool at the ass crack of dawn. Worse, it was an entitled bitch with 3 kids who full tilt showed up at 6:15 a.m. with everybody in swimsuits, water wings, a giant-ass pool lounger and cooler. I politely explained the pool was closed due to an alligator having gotten in overnight. And the father went full rage monster on my tiny 17-year-old self. I'm talking red face screaming, "Punched shrubbery." Yeah. That looked as silly as you think. And basically demanded I open the pool immediately for him. Did he want to swim with the alligator? I didn't ask, fearing the answer might be yes. I repeatedly, politely explained the situation as he got angrier and angrier. He actually demanded I get in and remove the alligator myself. How about no? Eventually, he demanded a refund. I could not do that, and tried to send him to my manager. He insisted I was the one refusing him service, so I had to give him his refund and tell him exactly when the pool would be reopened. Neither were possible. They were on vacation and were there to swim. Plus, he wanted me to store all their pool crap in our clubhouse. It was a glorified shed with an outdoor shower on the back. Of course, I could not do that for liability reasons. He wound up throwing all his stuff in the front of our clubhouse door and storming off to find my manager. I don't believe he ever did. If nobody was scheduled to check in or out, that was not going to happen. I loaded the abandoned property in my golf cart and drove it up to the main office, where I locked it in the manager's office per policy that I just made up. Fish and Wildlife did eventually come and relocate the alligator sometime after my shift was over. The family never did retrieve their stuff successfully, nor did they get that refund. Turned out our real policy on abandoned property was to take what you wanted and toss the rest in the dumpster. Number 3. The groundskeeper was no more reliably sober than the manager. One morning, while I was on duty, he'd been in the hooch quite a bit, possibly since the night before. He got distracted and drove the big riding mower straight through the chain-link fence and into the pool. Nobody was using it at the time. He swam out and wasn't hurt one bit. I locked up, put out my close sign, then stood around with the drunk groundskeeper staring at the mower in the pool in vague horror. Oil, gas, and green grass clippings from it had seeped out and floated to the top. The whole thing looked like a huge mess. I had no idea who to call for this one. The groundskeeper was drunk enough to think it was hilarious and had a giggle fit. I got the drunk guy off the pool deck, always a good idea, and tried to call down to the main office to my manager. That failed as hard as it always did for customers. This was beyond me. So I plopped down into a chair outside the gaping hole in the fence and made sure nobody went in. Because Murphy's Law is legit. A pre-Karen's Karen with a bad 80s perm showed up. She and her kids wanted to go swimming. I explained the situation. She screamed and yelled at me. They'd paid for a pool. They were on vacation. And she'd promised her kids swimming. They were going to swim. She literally insisted I was lying about the moor in spite of the obviously wrecked fence, and demanded to go inside to swim with her kids. She was on vacation! I couldn't possibly deny her kids their rightful time swimming. They'd been promised. Eventually, she physically shoved me aside and went over the wrecked fence, only to see that there really was a giant riding mower in the pool. Her shriek of horror was music to my ears. She demanded a refund. She demanded a voucher for somewhere else to take them swimming. She demanded I be fired. To me, which was extra random, as nobody else was around by then. She finally, blissfully, ran off to my manager threatening to sue for... I'm not sure what. Pre-Karen got nowhere with my manager. Surprise! Turns out, this was not the first time this had happened. My worthless manager actually knew a guy who had construction equipment that could pull the moor out of the pool. It was closed for about 2 weeks for removal and repairs, which were shockingly minor. I still got paid to hang out there and do nothing most days because I also ran the mini golf course, which was just as sad as the rest of the resort. Sadly, I was not on shift during the removal because that was almost certainly entertaining. This job sounds really eventful, but most days I sat in the clubhouse and read library books. More happened on the city bus I took to and from work than at work. Great little gig. 3. My family and I had landed in New York after a grueling 22-hour flight from Asia. Side note, most older Asian people are some of the most entitled and pretentious people you'll meet, especially if you're also Asian. Cast are as follows: me, mom, dad, sister 1, sister 2, asshole auntie, tired uncle. After a nearly 24-hour flight, our plane finally touched down in JFK. Most people were a little slow to stand, but my family and I got up and stretched before reaching for the overhead storage bins. You know that morning stretch feeling? Stretching after being crammed into an economy seat for hours is almost orgasmic. Anyways, most people had already gotten their luggage out and were itching to be let off the plane. There's nothing worse than standing around a bunch of people who haven't showered or brushed their teeth for a day. It's gross, but people were patient for the most part. I recorded the landing for my boyfriend, who had never been on a plane, and was recording the entire time until we walked out of the little accordion-like hallway thingy to the airport itself. This comes in handy. Not many people were on this flight back home, so my dad had the ability to lay flat and nap across 4 seats in the middle aisle, while my mom and sisters sat a row in front of him, and I was able to woman spread across the 3 window aisle seats. When it was time to get off, my family went back to their assigned seats across our row. The row in front of us was entirely empty except for a family of 4 towards the other side of the plane, and there were a couple of families in the row in front of them. The entitled uncle and auntie were in that row. Now, getting off a plane is simple. You just wait for the people in front of you to move. Almost like waiting in line at a grocery store. While our section of the plane was basically empty, the section in front of us was almost packed, and was taking some time to get organized. We were able to stand single file and even had people from the smaller section behind us join our line. This is where things went wrong. Leaving at least 3 feet of space in front of her, my sister started moving forward. She was giggling at my camera, but nonetheless was inclining forward with no intention of running through the aisle to the exit. Everything was all cool, before this bitch of an auntie decided to open her musty mouth. Auntie pushes my sister before she could even exit her own seat, thus stopping her in her tracks and causing an abrupt stop to the musty traveler train that was slowly inching forward. "Hey, don't you see the people in front of us aren't moving? Stop walking, we have to get out!" My sister, sister 1, was 12 at the time, so she looked to our tired parents as a defense. The section was quiet except for families whispering to themselves, so everyone standing in the section heard this. My sister was a little over an arm's length away from the auntie's own seat. She literally reached over the back of her seat to push my sister back into us. Regardless, the auntie had mad space to stand in, even if she wasn't going to leave her seat. My dad says, "Don't put your hands on my child because you're too lazy to get up and see the lines moving. Are you waiting for one of the attendants to carry you out?"
"It doesn't matter if I'm sitting. She tried to cut in front of me and no one else would have stopped to let me in. We also have to get our bags from the overhead storage too."
My mom says, "So get them, no one's stopping you. Don't put your hands on someone else's kid because you're too lazy to get up. We're not going to wait for you to get up, you're supposed to move with the line. She's over 2 feet from you and was nowhere near cutting in front of you."
"Pay attention, the line is moving."
The auntie gets up and makes the tired uncle throw her bags down from the overhead storage. As the uncle is getting the bags down, the auntie, who got up and stood in front of my sister instead of the 3 feet of open space in front of their seats, started moving backwards as if her husband was throwing their bags down. She clearly knew what she was doing and was moving backwards into my sister's backpack, which she had set down on the floor.
"Hey, look, she's trying to trip me with her bag."
A random passenger on the other side of the section says, "We were all watching you and you were purposely backing up into that girl. How could she have tripped you if her bag was behind you, stupid cow?" Asshole auntie kicks my sister's bag into the leg space of the nearest seat and pushes her back into me. Remember, I was recording the whole thing and decided to use it against her. I say without using the proper conjugation of words used to address older people. "Stupid grandma, that man is right. And I have been recording this whole time, so we'll see if the airport security also thinks we're right. Everyone here and everyone that's going to watch this video will know that you, the passenger of 22A, I don't know what it was, this was like 6 years ago, assaulted this person for no reason, and verbally abused others around you. You're in economy, not first class. Move." She looked at me and the others around us in disgust. Her husband ended up having to pull her forward because she wouldn't stop threatening us with the fact that her son is a New York ticket officer and would write us tickets. Pretty sure her son is one of those guys that walks around city streets ticketing parked cars, not an actual cop. 4. Backstory. I have an extensive background in retail and customer service, so I know how fun it can be to deal with self-absorbed and self-important people, regardless if they have reproduced. Ugh. Anyway, I have battle scars from dealing with people in my working life. I used to be a cashier at one point, a call center agent, restaurant worker, etc. I am not one to find conflict, but damn, I can hold my own if need be. Oh, and I am also a women's rugby forward, so I am by no means tiny. This is relevant later. So to the incident. I shop at a grocery store where the cashier rings you up and you bag your order. From my cashing days, I bag in such a way it's easier to unpack at home. Frozen in one bag, veggies in another, squishy, bread, eggs, fragile things. You get the idea. It's just me for now, so the order isn't overly big. Canned cat food, pineapple in one bag, and spinach in a longer bag. I was not slacking by any means. I am bagging my merry way since the belt moves rapidly. I am stressed. I hate unpredictable shopping crowds and rather be home with my 2 kitties. And there, out of the corner of my eye, are the EPs behind me. Unsuspecting and quiet, there is a baby. It was in the buggy with the entitled father. Should I be wary? No, I don't care. The guy unloaded his order and was moving his buggy along the till. He looked sad and defeated. He would have slapped his buggy into me had I not asked the guy to not hit me in the knees as he went to line up with the cashier. He stopped, I thanked him, and continued to bag at the end of the till. I was working on finishing up bagging the order. A few moments later I hear, "Can you hurry up?" I glance back. There is a young, thin white woman, mid-20s, red curly hair, leaning on her buggy, behind the guy with the baby. She has a bassinet for the aforementioned baby in her buggy. "I'm almost done. I appreciate your patience." I continue bagging. "You asked my husband to stop. You need to move." I look back at her. I'm almost finished. I go back to the groceries, essentially ignoring the EM. I am not rushing for this woman. I don't rush unless someone is bleeding to death. She slumps dejected she's not getting her way. She won't. This isn't Burger King. "Are you a psycho?" She screeches over EF at me. Everyone around her stops and looks at her, myself included, shocked at her outburst. My stomach bottomed out from the adrenaline. I had read enough EM stories that I thought I'd have a little fun with the brat. I gave the most crazy, wide and maddened smile I could think of to this woman. I saw a momentary flash of fear in her eyes. I'm still grinning like I'm completely insane. I'm also bagging without looking. "Takes one to know one," I say back to her. I smirked, turning back to my order. I look back. She is glaring daggers at me. The husband is looking at me wide-eyed. She's not done by any means. I took a breath and did what I did best. "Really classy to be calling people names when you can't get your way," I said loud enough for everyone within earshot to hear. EM hangs her head. I was nearly finished. A few odds and ends to go into a fabric bag.
"I have a baby. Can you please hurry up?"
I drop the can of olives on a belt and turn to the EF. I look him square in the eye. He puffs his chest out to me to intimidate me into moving faster. I squared my shoulders. Guess who was bigger? Ha! He stepped back. I took a step into him. "Just 'cause you have a baby, it doesn't make you any more special than the rest of us. You can wait since I'm almost done." "Thank you," I said bluntly. He hung his head. I glanced back at the mother. She was still hanging her head as she leaned on the buggy. My arms crossed over her head. I turned back to the few items I had left. I put them in the bag that still had some space. The cashier gave me my total. I paid. The cashier handed my receipt to me. I said thank you to the cashier. I picked up the remainder of my bags from the belt. I threw everything into my buggy at the end of the till. I started walking out of the store and called to catch a cab home. I stood in the front of the store waiting for the cab to show. While I waited, I saw the EF running across the parking lot to his car whilst pushing the baby buggy. They were running for what seemed dear life. I grabbed my phone, bringing up the video in the event they decided to continue the discussion. I see the EM sprinting as she pushes her groceries in the same direction as the EF. Yeah, I hate grocery shopping as it is. 5. My God, I saw one in real life. And not only did I see one, I almost got my head bitten off in the process. I've been working as a face painter and children's party host since I was in high school. Now, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the kids are rarely the problem. 9 times out of 10, it's the parents who insist on making my life and the lives of everyone else waiting to get their face painted difficult. So, it's Sunday, and I'm working at the local pub. They've got family day every Sunday. It's a sweet setup. Usually, it's a pretty quiet gig, but on this particular day there were 3 different birthday lunches booked. And I've subsequently found myself with a line almost 30 kids long. So I pull out the good old numbering system. Each kid gets a number so that A, they don't have to stand in line for half an hour, and B, so I don't mess up the order. And for an hour and a half, it works. And then I've just beckoned over this sweet older girl, SG, who's been patiently waiting for over 30 minutes when the screaming begins. And I mean screaming. There's a little girl, we'll call her Banshee, just staring at me and bellowing, while myself and SG's mother, who's been helping me keep the kids in check, we'll call her Hero Mum, are trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Over stamps Banshee's mother, REM, and it soon becomes pretty clear where Banshee got her pipes from. This woman points her finger directly into SG's face and shouts, "You stole my daughter's spot." The poor kid looks mortified, so I try to defuse the situation. "Excuse me, but SG was next in line. She has a number and has been waiting for a while now." Well, EM doesn't like this at all. "My daughter has been waiting since 1 o'clock. It's her turn." Now, I immediately smell bull because it was around 1 that I realized numbers were going to be needed to avoid chaos. And Banshee was not in the line when I was handing them out. A fact corroborated by the distinct lack of a number on her hand. I tried to point this out to EM. "I'm sorry, but she can't have been. Otherwise she would have a number." And this is when the shit hits the fan. "Number? Are you that incompetent that you need to use numbers? Maybe if you did your job properly, there wouldn't be kids bloody everywhere, and you wouldn't need numbers." Now look, I've been snapped at plenty of times by disgruntled parents. But EM's insinuation that it's my job to babysit her child really pisses me off. I move to inform her of my feelings, but Hero Mom beats me to it. Hey, do you realise that she's not a babysitter? Your daughter doesn't have a number, she's clearly pushed in. OP is painting the kids for free, the least you can do is keep your eye on your own. In this moment, I'm both grateful and terrified that Hero Mom is about to be swallowed whole. I have never seen someone so incensed about something as mundane as face painting. This woman's face turns tomato red, and she proceeds to let forth a barrage of verbal destruction upon Hero Mom, who, to her considerable credit, doesn't flinch, but rather stands there looking just as bewildered as I am. EM isn't slowing down, but she is still screaming. And the other kids are beginning to get really uneasy. Some of the little ones are starting to look legitimately scared. SG looks like she's about to cry, and I've momentarily forgotten how to speak because, well, the whole situation is so unpleasant, and yet so very, very ridiculous. And then Hero Mom has had it. I've only known her for an hour, but already I've figured out that she's a classy-ass lady. In the greatest takedown I've seen since I don't know when, she looks the raging bull dead in the eye and points out, "You're kinda rude, you know that?" It's like someone has pulled a plug. EM stops in her tracks. The steam stops pouring from her ears. And she just stares at Hero Mom dumbfounded. It's a good 10 seconds before she manages to come up with a response. "No, you're rude." And with that, she turns, yanks Banshee's arm so hard that the kid almost hits the ground and drags her out of the pub. She's gone, and I'm just left staring at Hero Mom in utter disbelief. So, normal Sunday then? So, for everyone who bothered to listen this far, I know it's not the craziest story, but it really got to me. How entitled do you have to be in order to justify making someone else's child cry, just so you can cover up your own mistake? Like, this woman was in her 40s, and she decided that the logical course of action, rather than using this situation to teach her daughter a lesson about patience and taking turns, would be to verbally abuse an innocent child, a bystander, and a fairy who was offering to paint her kid's face for free. I just can't fathom it. As children's entertainers, we love doing what we do, but we're not babysitters. If you aren't willing to take responsibility for your own kid, then that's on you. Props to Hero Mom, though. What an absolute legend. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to The Impractical Proudness of Parents, IPOP, number 16. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I have a little project this weekend. I'm rearranging, sort of, my living room. A couple of weeks back, I did clear the table that had this old hi-fi system on it off. So that's going to get moved. I might end up throwing it out because I don't really need the table. There's nothing wrong with it, I just don't need it anymore. So that's going to get moved anyway out of the living room. And to my pleasant surprise, I'd ordered a unit of shelves. So I can put my CDs, DVDs, and books, and I expect I'll probably buy some Blu-rays at some point. Put them on there, which will be a lot neater, so I can tidy the living room up properly. And I was very surprised that I thought it would arrive the 3rd of September at the latest. And I was thinking to myself, well, it'd be nice if it arrived on Saturday, but I won't expect it. And I was very shocked to find I got a knock at the door yesterday. Here it is. Only took 2 days. So that was nice. It's always nice when things arrive promptly when you're not expecting them to. It's the opposite feeling you get when things don't arrive promptly when you're expecting them within a day when you've been promised. Anyway, mustn't grumble. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.